There we go. That's how we do it. Listen, this has been
That's
an
right.
absolute nightmare. It's glad to be here, though. I'm so sorry. But here we are. Let's rock and roll. I said it was your show. Here we go. Let's rock and roll, baby.
Well, took long enough, but we're here. We're here at last. And boy, oh boy, we have Bengals football coming up. And we talked about the preseason for a while. We watched a preseason game with you guys. We even got on here for a few hours during cut day and talked about guys 53 through 60 on the roster or so. But at long last, we're here for meaningful football. And we actually get to talk about some meaningful things. But we're going to start with the thing I think we've been talking about for about 2 months now. And I think it's the biggest thing with all of the Bengals roster, all of the Bengals outlook going into week one. And it's Ja'Marr Chase. I mean, Ja'Marr Chase still not practicing. A lot of questions coming out of national media about whether or not he's going to play in week one. I'm starting to lose a little bit of my confidence about whether or not he's going to get out there in week one. I'm still overly confident that he's going to play this season. But when it comes to week one, when it comes to practice the rest of training camp, where do you stand with Ja'Marr Chase? Do you expect a contract to get done? Do you think he'll play without one? Where do you stand?
I have, and I've had this opinion for a long time, but I think I'm closer to you where, like, I had this opinion for the longest time that I thought he was going to play week one. I thought he was going to play, get a deal done. And as time has kind of went on, that opinion has changed. It has changed quite considerably. That being said, I still anticipate him, and maybe it's just naive, maybe it's just my positive nature, my optimistic nature, is that I think that he will play. And I think he'll be great. And I think he'll show up. And I think that I don't know if they'll get a deal done. I've kind of lost that faith. I thought for the longest time that there would be a deal done. But I think he will play week one. He will play this season. And by the end of the season, there will be a contract extension. Any doubt I ever had about Ja'Marr Chase not being a long-term Bengal, like that's really rarely crept into my mind. I know that's
Right.
kind of meandered around your opinion because at one point,
A little bit.
and it's hard not to. It's hard not to. There's no doubt about that because it's the will he won't. I didn't even get a chance to talk about my opinion about what went last week. I thought that was a terrible call by Ja'Marr Chase's people to have him show up as coach. That being said, I don't know how much it's gonna hurt his chances of getting that extension. But my overall opinion, and it might be a naive one, and it might be an overly optimistic one, but it is my opinion, is that Ja'Marr Chase will play this Sunday, and it'll be like nothing has happened this offseason. That's what I anticipate to happen.
I certainly hope you're right. He can't sit out the whole season. That's just not a feasible course of action for him because if he doesn't play, he doesn't get this service year on his rookie contract. And then this whole holdout is for naught anyway because he can't get an extension. So Jamar's going to be back at some point this year. The question is just when. The Bengals are 3-2 since he got drafted without him. They've played fairly well without him. The passing yards per game and a lot of the passing stats are very similar. But the main thing that sticks out is it's 9 touchdowns to 6 interceptions in those 5 games without him. Joe Burrow, whoever's been at quarterback in those 5 games, has really struggled with the touchdown to interception ratio without Ja'Marr Chase. And I think that just goes to show the comfort level that they have when he's out there. You know what he's going to do. You know he's going to get open. Whether he runs the right route or he just finds open space on the field, either way, Ja'Marr Chase is one of the best ball catchers in the entire league. And having him out there just makes the world of a difference.
Yeah, it's like it is interesting when you hear 3-2, right? Because you're like, well, I mean, like that's a positive in all these things, but then you break it down, and it's because he's a generational talent out there. There's a reason that when you go around and ask Cincinnati Bengals fans their opinion of Ja'Marr Chase, it's overwhelmingly he's one of the best in the league. We should give him extension, give him whatever we want. And it's because of how great of a player he is, and there's no doubt about it. Now, I do have a developing opinion about wide receivers in the NFL that I'll holster for a later date. But at this moment, there's just no doubt about what Ja'Marr Chase does. And it's really, other than Joe Burrow, there's no one we've seen like that on this team, at least on the offensive side of the ball, to where that when they play, there is a noticeable uptick in production. When he's not playing, there is a very clear miss. There's a very clear hole in that offense, and there's no wonder why we are talking about Ja'Marr Chase being the highest paid wide receiver, not just in the current NFL, but in the history of the NFL, if he does get this extension done, which is what he wants.
There was an interesting quote earlier today on a Kay Adams podcast. She had Justin Jefferson on it. Obviously, Jefferson and Chase played together at LSU, and Justin Jefferson said, "I hope he gets the contract that he's looking for, but I also hope he plays it smart and not to let it get in the way of his greatness and being on the field." This is a guy who just got paid and reset the market earlier this offseason. He played all the way through his rookie contract and then got the contract and did the holdout kind of when it's more expected that would be the case. I think this is his way of kind of telling Ja'Marr, yeah, I agree with what you're doing. You need to get paid. You need to get your money. You need to be respected, but you also need to be on the field. You can't let this get in the way of the first thing that's first. And first things first is playing football. You're an NFL football player. All the cash and everything's nice. But if he sits out this whole year, I think the worst case scenario for Ja'Marr Chase is that he sits out and the Bengals are really good. Right. If he sits out 5 weeks and the Bengals go 4-1, something like that, rip off crazy wins against Baltimore, Kansas City, real contenders, and look good without Ja'Marr, I think that just kills his negotiation strategy even more, because then why are you even paying him $40 million if you can be the same Super Bowl contending team without him? So I think that's a part of the situation that a lot of people might not think about. It incentivizes Ja'Marr Chase to get out there just in case they don't take a step back without him.
It's what you're circling is what you've talked about. It's what people in the local media have talked about, and it really hasn't gotten to the national media, is whenever you're talking about deals, whenever you're talking about contract negotiations, really anything, the main thing in those are leverage. How much leverage do you have? And the thing that you're circling around is the amount of leverage that Ja'Marr Chase has is minuscule. What he's teetering on, in all honesty, when it comes to this leverage, is pressure from us fans to go out there and say, like, hey, you've got to sign this guy. We can't play without this guy. Because that's what we fans do. We fall in love with a player and we want to see him play every single chance that we get. And when that's not happening, we blame the billionaires, or in this case, Mike Brown, who's one of the only NFL owner that isn't a billionaire.
One day. Someday. Maybe he sells enough TVs, he'll get there.
Yeah, two owners aren't billionaires in the NFL. One's the Green Bay Packers, who of course are publicly owned, and then the other is Mike Brown. But that's beside the case. When we don't see our favorite player play on the field, we instantly blame ownership. We instantly blame the front office. We instantly blame the head coach, and something's going wrong. We want to see Ja'Marr Chase play. That's really the only leverage he has. Because he's got to play out his rookie contract. It doesn't push back that clock. You're literally just like throwing it down the road. So if he doesn't play, he's not getting paid. He's not gonna get closer to free agency. So it's just such an interesting development that his only real leverage is us fans putting pressure on the Cincinnati Bengals. And then on top of that is like, hey, if you don't play me, you might not be a Super Bowl contender like you think you are, which that's probably a little more leverage than I'm admitting right here. But it's just really incredible. And you said it best when, like, what happens if he doesn't play and T. Higgins, Jermaine Burton, Andre Yoshivas, whatever the crew is, go out there and the Bengals are the number one offense in the NFL. What are we looking at Ja'Marr Chase and saying, like, what are you worth to this team anymore?
Yeah, and T. Higgins in games without Ja'Marr Chase has raised his game to another level. He's averaging over 100 yards per game, 3 touchdowns in those 5 games, and 2 more targets in games without Ja'Marr Chase than games with him, over 8 targets per game in there. I've had high expectations for T. Higgins this entire offseason. I know the season didn't really start great last year, obviously. That Browns game that we've talked about is one of the worst wide receiver performances of all time in week 1 last year, but he's seen great all throughout camp this year. He seems to just be picking up right where we left off. It's the T we all know and love, and that's a guy I think that has had a lot of his shine taken away from Ja'Marr Chase throughout training camp. I think he deserves so much more credit for what he's done this offseason. I understand that the focus is Ja'Marr Chase, and he's the superstar on this team, and I think everyone gets that. T. Higgins getting here early in camp, signing his franchise tag, putting his head down and working, not saying a single word for months as we get close to week 1, and just grinding and getting ready for the season. That's exactly what you want out of a wide receiver. That's what the franchise tag is for. You tag a guy that represents your franchise, and that's exactly what T. Higgins has done. Obviously, he wants a long-term contract, and maybe he deserves it, but he's handled this incredibly well.
Yeah, it's so funny to hear, like, we're just lily padding jumping from all off season is T. Higgins talk. What's T. Higgins going to do? Where's T. Higgins' future? And then the second that's resolved, all right, now we got to worry about Ja'Marr Chase and then get worked up in this whole thing is we're forgetting how truly great T. Higgins is. I mean, you might not recall the Penei Sewell versus Jamar Chase arguments 3 years ago, but we were talking about it like, why would we go get a first-round wide receiver? We already have a generational talent in T. Higgins. Why would we want another one? And it quickly revolved. Like, this team, we're very excited about all the rookies, or we're very excited about Jermaine Burton. We're very excited about a sophomore effort in Andre Yoshivas. I'm excited about Mike Gesicki as a pass catcher as well. And T. Higgins is still thought of, if he doesn't, and we don't think he will be back with the Bengals this year, he's still thought of as one of the top 15 wide receivers in this league. 15, 20, somewhere in that range. But on most teams, he's a 1. And here, he's a 2. But if Jamar Chase isn't out there, this wide receiving unit is still one of the best in the NFL. Certainly one of the best in the AFC. Right. So, like, if Jamar doesn't play, which is worst case scenario, I think, for a lot of people, not just us, Jamar, as you previously put that, I still don't have a whole lot of concern about what this offensive output is because, as I've said multiple times, and I'll continue to say, I think this offense flows through a blonde-haired boy when he's upright. So as long as he is standing upright in the pocket, I like what the Bengals are going to do offensively. It's not rocket science to me. Once you get one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and I don't know if you saw this, The Athletic put out their tiers, which was quarterback tiers based on what other coaches thought, what other front offices thought, what other, like a myriad of people. They put Joe Burrow in tier 1 with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, as you and I think that he should be. So Once you get that, the rest of the offense kind of falls in. You protect him, that's number 1. Who he throws to is secondary. And that being said, we want Jamar Chase to play. I'm not belittling Jamar Chase's impact on this team, but I also don't necessarily think it's the end of the world if we go out there with T. Higgins, Jermaine Burton, Andre Yoshivas. Like, I think this team will flourish as long as 9 is upright.
We sat here for like the last 3 years with Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins on this team, banging the table. We have 3 wide receiver 1s in Cincinnati. Well, obviously Tyler Boyd's gone, but like you just said, T. Higgins is a wide receiver 1. If Jamar Chase sits out for a few weeks, we're going to be just fine, especially with this schedule. That's a lot of people don't talk about as well with the Bengals this year. I've seen some national news outlets trying to be cute now, picking the Bengals to miss the playoffs for back-to-back years. And I don't think people necessarily understand how easy this schedule is looking at it. I know the games aren't played on paper. I know, teams can make a big change from year to year, but this is a 4th place schedule for a team that really wasn't even a 4th place team last year. You were only 4th place because you played in a division with 3 playoff teams. You were overall pretty competitive in a dang good conference that is the AFC. You add Joe Burrow to a healthy season there. I think the Bengals, with or without Jamar, at least for a little stretch, I think the Bengals are going to be just fine. I have a lot of faith in in a lot of those other guys, Yoshivas, Burton, even Charlie Jones, being able to pick up the slack with T obviously being the marquee guy in the offense without him. But speaking of a lot of those guys, we had a lot of big news today with the Bengals' updated depth chart. And a lot of the different position battles going on in Cincinnati were seemingly resolved as we go into week 1. And I think the biggest one that sticks out to everyone, obviously with Jamar Chase on everyone's mind, is Andre Yoshivas being listed as the wide receiver 3. I think that was an expectation for a lot of people since he was here last year. He was relatively productive, and the Bengals don't love just throwing a rookie into the fire right away. We haven't seen that with many rookies outside of Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. Rookies usually, ride the bench for a little bit, learn the ways of the program, and I think that's exactly what we're seeing here. We've obviously heard a lot of the different stories about Jermaine Burton, in meetings and the playbook and all the different negatives. How can he start
when he's sleeping the entire time, right?
He did deny that. He denied that claim, said he didn't know where it came from. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt there. But yeah, I'm not sour on Jermaine Burton just because he's not starting on day 1. I don't know that I necessarily expected. I think this was an upside pick. If he was going to come in and produce at the level that we all think he's going to produce at on day 1, he wouldn't have been there at pick 81. I think that's just about as simple as it gets. He's a first-round talent. We've said that basically all summer. If there wasn't something wrong, he would have went a lot earlier. So there's a lot of things we're going to have to work through. I think he'll make a difference. But Andre Yoshivas, wide receiver 3, do you think he's going to hold on to that spot all year long, or is it going to be just kind of a musical chairs of rotating through?
I think the latter. The latter, in short, is I think that it will be kind of a myriad of different people. And a lot of people point at, and they say, well, Joe Burrow's going to be without Tyler Boyd. He's kind of been the rock of that wide receiving room for the last few years. He's been wide receiver 3 since Jamar Chase came in. And we saw kind of Tyler Boyd dip off last year, and we were comfortable with letting him go out to pasture, and we liked what we saw. Andre Yoshivas had, caught 6 passes last year, 4 touchdowns. Pretty efficient there from old Yoshi. And Jermaine Burton, between him being a threat, between Andre Yoshivas being a threat in the red zone, and Jermaine Burton being a threat downfield and kind of working, not necessarily putting the weight of the world on Jermaine Burton's shoulders to say, like, hey, we need you to figure it out quickly. No, you can learn from other skilled players. You can learn from Jamar Chase. You can learn from T. Higgins. And you can learn from Joe Burrow. And you can figure out how to be a productive wide receiver in this league. Yes, I think that it will be kind of a third wide receiver by committee. It'll be kind of a thing where we show up to Off the Bench on Monday morning, or we show up to Chatterbox Bengals on Tuesday evening, Sunday after the game, and we sit here and go, man, what a great game from Yoshi today, or what a great game from Jermaine Burton, or what a great game from whatever third option there was, Mike Gesicki, any of them, whatever the third option was pass catcher wise, we're going to show up on different weeks and be like, man, what a tremendous game. And that is so important to this offense, to having multiple threats and multiple ways that we can attack you, where, all right, well, Jermaine Burton's not it today. Well, we'll go to Yoshi or whoever. And I think that's how this offense is going to rotate, to where it's not just going to be the Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd anymore. It's going to be Jamar Chase, T. Higgins for a year, and then we're going to figure out who number 2 is, unless we draft someone early on next year, because T. Higgins is probably gone, maybe not, after this year. And we're going to figure out a lot about this team based on the production out of that third spot all season long.
Everyone's focused on Yoshi, Burton, and Charlie Jones, and rightfully so. Those 3 guys have distantly the highest upside, but Trent and Irwin has been as consistent as they come in this wide receiver room. I would not be shocked if we get 1 or 2 Trent and Irwin games, just like you were talking about there. Mm-hmm. We're talking about, we're shocked a guy has good production. Maybe he goes, 3 catches, 2 touchdowns, like 80 yards, 1 or 2 games. That seems like the Trent and Irwin recipe, and I would be shocked if we didn't see at least 1 or 2 of those this year.
It's so funny when Trent Irwin's on the screen, because like he's the kind of player that you could forget plays for the Cincinnati Bengals until he catches me. Oh yeah, Trent Irwin, he's awesome. Let's go.
That's right.
Like, it's like, yeah, let's go. Irwin to the house. Let's rock and roll, baby. Like, you will not see Trent Irwin for half the season, and then like 3 straight weeks he'll have 4 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. And you're like, whoa. Where did this guy come from? Yeah, but that's kind of the name
for sure
that you can full into the mix, where that is a veteran presence now. You got a guy in his sophomore season, his rookie season. You got Mike Gesicki, who's TE2 on the depth chart, but he's going to be pass catcher 3, and that's a little tease to something we're going to talk about later. But we have all these different options that you'll sometimes forget. Oh yeah, Trent Irwin's going to come out there, and it's a veteran presence amongst a very young wide receiving 3 group.
Well, you teased it there, but I was going to get into it next. Your favorite player on the Bengals cracked the 1s today.
That's right.
Depth chart came out, and Drew Sample, tight end 1. I know I personally certainly expected Gesicki there, but my first guess when looking at this is they're just simply not going to use Gesicki as a tight end. Drew Sample is going to be the tight end. Gesicki's going to be a slot receiver, like we saw him play for over 50% of the snaps at his time in Miami. I think you're going to see Mike Gesicki, for my money, be the 3rd leading receiver on this team behind Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Him being second on the depth chart doesn't really phase me. I know a lot of people have had red flags pop up and be a little bit nervous that he had a bad camp or whatnot. I just think he's more of a pass catcher than a true tight end. And what the Bengals want to do with that tight end position, I think Drew Sample just fits it better.
So here's what I think happened when they put the final depth chart out today. Is they looked around and they said, all right, is Jamar Chase going to play? And they said, I don't know if he's going to play or not. And they're like, all right, here's what we're going to do. If Jamar Chase doesn't play, we're going to get it to our real playmaker, Drew Sample, right. DS89. You get the ball in open space, and you watch the boy make plays. Simple as that. No, but you're absolutely right. It's so funny. Last year, Drew Sample had he's had so many different roles on this team, to where he is the traditional blocking back. We saw him be the 3rd down running back last year. Like, I don't think enough people recognize that at the end of last year. Drew Sample was our 3rd down back. He was back there giving protection. And to be honest, wouldn't hate seeing that again. want to hate seeing that again. You use a guy, if you look at the talents that you have, you look at one of the guys that his best talent is, he blocks really well. And then you can slip him out every now and then and have kind of a wow play as he scored the 2 touchdowns, the bowling ball touchdown.
That's right.
And the 1 touchdown. Who'd he score? The Bills? I think it was in the Bills game. He scored the first touchdown there. Shout out to anyone that bet Drew Sample first touchdown scorer in that one, as you probably are in a different tax bracket now. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Mike Gesicki, we look at all of these things, all the signings that they had. As excited as I am for Mike Gesicki and Joe Burrow getting a true red zone threat, maybe the first time he's ever had a true red zone threat in Mike Gesicki, he wasn't at the top of my free agent list that I was excited about. There's some defensive pieces that I actually liked a little bit better. But yeah, I truly anticipate Mike Gesicki to be kind of the third target for Joe. And I mentioned the young guys too, but more often than not wide receiver 3, but pass catcher 3 will be Mike Gesicki. And it's because of what he does in the red zone. It's just kind of the different frame that he has. And it's kind of a talent that we haven't had here in the Joe Burrow era in Cincinnati.
Not a lot of other surprises on the offensive side of the ball, depth chart wise, with Amarius Mims hurt. That kind of put out the fire of one of the most exciting position battles in Bengals camp at right tackle between him and Trent Brown. Trent Brown obviously going to get the start in week 1 with Mims landing on the PUP list, but he has been practicing off to the side, getting some solo work in, no sled work yet, but seemingly working his way back. Good signs for Amarius Mims, hopefully reigniting that competition towards the middle of the season. I know Trent Brown's here on a 1-year deal. I know he's been a good tackle in the league for a long time. Personally, I still expect Mims to be starting by the end of the year. I just think the upside is so high. I think he'll work his way back into the lineup, and maybe it's because Trent Brown wasn't here, but before Mims got hurt, he really did look like he was going to be the starting right tackle in week 1. So I'm still holding out some hope that we could see him this year, but I think all likelihood would be that Trent Brown is probably the right tackle throughout the year.
I don't want Amarius Mims to start at right tackle this year because I don't believe that he will earn it outright. So that means that what's going to happen is that Trent Brown is going to have to go down, or Trent Brown's playing so terrible that they're going to have to make the switch. Both of those things, not ideal because it hurts the depth if Trent Brown goes down, and then it just shows another bad signing for the right side of the line if Trent Brown doesn't turn out to be the tackle that we somewhat anticipate. We just need him to be serviceable, don't need him to be generational. But when it comes to Amarius Mims, I'm all bought in. Everything that everyone says about his frame and build is I have completely bought into 100%. We had a big argument in the studio not too long ago about whether Amarius Mims was a project or not. I still think it's silly to think that he isn't a project when he only had 7 starts. That being said, talent is talent and size is size, and he has both those things. So I believe I'm fully bought into Amarius Mims is the right tackle of the future, or just a pillar on this offensive line for years to come. That being said, I don't want him to start this year because I think something will have gone wrong if that's the case. I don't think there's going to be a week 7 where Trent Brown is out there playing good right tackle and they go like, yeah, he's good. He's playing pretty well, but Amarius Mims looks great in practice. We're going to make the switch right now. I don't think that happens. So if Amarius Mims plays, it'll be because something bad has happened. So I don't want it to happen.
I certainly agree with you there, but Trent Brown has played over 11 games twice in the last 7 years. So I think if you had to bet on it, having a healthy Amarius Mims as the backup is probably a pretty good call. And I think that was the Bengals' plan going into the season. I think they took Amarius Mims planning to have him back up Trent Brown. You didn't know how the board was going to fall, and you probably wouldn't have signed Trent Brown if you knew you were going to get Amarius Mims. But you had Trent Brown on the roster. You draft Amarius Mims. I think the system was always to have him sit. That's why I didn't freak out too much when he got hurt. Certainly sets back the progression, the progress of getting better in the NFL system a little bit, but I still think he's generally along the timeline. The last piece I wanted to touch on the offensive side of the ball, Zach Moss gets the nod at running back 1. I know this is what I expected. I know a lot of people thought Chase Brown and his burst, his team speed was going to take the cake there, but Zach Moss is just a get-it-done kind of guy. He led the NFL in yards over expectation last year, and that's just a killer stat for the Bengals. Joe Joe Mixon, the main knock for him was on a 3-yard run, he'd get 3 yards. On a 5-yard run, he'd get 5 yards. How many times have you heard that said? That's not the case with Zach Moss. Zach Moss is a broken tackle machine, and he's also elite in pass pro. He's one of the best blocking running backs in the entire league. He graded out as a top 5 PFF pass blocking running back in his career. That's unbelievable consistency at the running back position, and that's what I want for the Bengals. I know a lot of people point to last year not being a very good rushing offense. I don't want the Bengals to be a top 10 rushing offense. I don't think that's how we win. That's not the recipe to success. Reed said it 5 times. The only way we win is if 9's upright, and I know you need to run the ball in order to do that and balance the game. Sure. We're going to be a passing team. Passing is going to come first. And having a running back that can protect in the backfield is great. And I think you're maximizing Chase Brown's ability by using him as a change of pace back. I've likened this backfield to the Jeremy Hill, Giovanni Bernard, just kind of modernized a little bit in this era.
It's so interesting when you hear people talk about the Bengals run game. And I fought tooth and nail for this last year. When you play in the AFC North, this is the toughest, grizzled division in the National Football League. You know, there's fights. And maybe people outside the AFC North don't see it like this, but we certainly do. And then you look at the other teams in it. You've got the Baltimore Ravens, number 1 rushing team in the league. You've got the Pittsburgh Steelers, who a long time have been a really good running team and really a run-first team, kind of the old school football. Then you got the Cleveland Browns, the Cleveland Browns with Nick Chubb and everyone like that. And you're just like, all right, so everyone else in the team is very successful running the ball. That's what we should do. That's what this division is. And it's okay to go the opposite way, because when we've seen this team at its best, it's through the air. It has been. And it's Joe Burrow. Yes, Joe Mixon was fantastic for years here. And I'm going to miss him. I hope he does fantastic for the Houston Texans.
For sure.
But if you're asking me where I want this Cincinnati Bengals team to be, I don't want to be talking about how great of a year Zach Moss is having or Chase Brown is having, because ultimately, if I know those are the conversations we're having, then it's Jamar Chase or Joe Burrow aren't excelling to the way that we think them are. T. Higgins isn't excelling the way that we want him to be. So we're like, oh yeah, well, we're not throwing the ball very well. Joe's throwing a lot of interceptions, but hey, Zach Moss rushed for 100 yards. That's not the conversations I want to have. And you guys know my opinion. If you watch Chatterbox long enough, you know that I don't think very highly of running backs in the National Football League to begin with. I think that there is Zach Moss, Chase Brown, it truly doesn't matter. I think it's going to be split. I've had multiple people, I'm sure you have too, text you, hey, who's going to be the starting running back? Who's going to get most of the carries? I don't know. It says Zach Moss is going to be our starter, but I don't care either, because I think that both ways, I think either one of them are going to be fine. I think it's just going to be more of the, I mean, I know they have different styles and everything like that, but it's just another running back in the NFL. I'm not overly worried about it all. As you said, as I've said it, passing is the way that this team is going to win. It's what's going to get us to the promised land. Zach Moss being a really good protection back, that's great. We don't have to put Drew Sample back there, even though I still kind of like it. But yeah, it's Zach Moss being one. He's the veteran. I know it's a surprise for some. It's not a surprise for me. It shouldn't be a surprise for you fans.
I agree.
He's the veteran. He's the veteran, and he did a great job in Indianapolis last year.
The rest of the offensive side of the ball was pretty chalk with the new depth chart. The other two surprises came on defense. I guess one surprise and one kind of upset that my expectation came through. Dax Hill emerging as cornerback 2, taking over for DJ Turner on the depth chart. Him and Cam Taylor-Britt are going to start the season on the outside. I'm overjoyed. Maybe I'm a little too optimistic, but going from drafting a safety that was a bust in the first round to a starting outside corner, the positional value is the change there is insane. I mean, even the best safety isn't worth a corner 2 in most cases. If you got a legitimate starting outside corner on a championship caliber defense with pick 31 in that draft, Dax Hill turns into an unbelievable pick. So that's really why I'm excited for him out there. It's just because you're giving him a chance to succeed at a position he played much more often in college. I know it was an outside corner. He played most nickel corner out of anything, but that's still much, much closer to outside corner than it is safety. We threw Dax Hill into the fire as a rookie. We didn't really give him a chance, asking him to fill Jesse Bates' shoes. And now I think he's actually getting a shot to play at a position, to play a role that he could legitimately thrive in. All the reports out of camp are that he absolutely killed it, that he earned this spot, that it was going to be DJ Turner's, and Dax Hill made them change the depth chart. And that's exactly what you want to hear. The worst case scenario is you have two guys vying for cornerback 2, and neither of them are any good. So you're just throwing the one out there you threw out there last year. I'm not saying that would have been the case if DJ Turner was out there, but that's at least a little bit of the expectation if Dax Hill didn't get a little bit of hype, is that, well, he just stinks there too. I'm glad that it was the debate number one, and I'm glad that Dax Hill won it.
Can you imagine if Dax Hill, if this appears to be just a tremendous fit for him, and for the first time in probably a decade, we are looking at positional value, as you said, and having a lot of confidence, not just in CB1, because I love Cam Taylor-Britt, but in CB2 and Dax Hill. Yeah. And in what is probably the fourth most important position on the field after pass rush, tackle, and quarterback is cornerback. And to where Dax Hill has earned that right outright, it's truly fantastic. And maybe I'm getting a little ahead of my skis, right? Maybe I'm getting just a little bit over here. But are you confident in the depth of this secondary? Because I'm gaining a little bit of confidence in the depth of this secondary.
I think I love the depth of our secondary.
Yeah.
I think it might be one of my favorite pieces of the entire team. I mean, that's what I was about to get to here next. I'm upset that Von Bell's starting over Jordan Battle at safety. I just think Jordan Battle's upside at the defense at safety is so much higher. He's going to be here for the long haul. Von Bell won't. I would have loved to see Jordan Battle out there. I still think he will be by the end of the season. But you have Jordan Battle off the bench at safety. Tyson Anderson has been a special teams monster. Probably would have been a Pro Bowler last year before that injury. Josh Newton, who had a great preseason, the rookie out of TCU, and then DJ Turner coming off the bench at corner. Corner was a huge liability last year, and even was coming into this offseason. We were worried about it. How many times did we talk about, the guy from Miami, what's his name? I'm forgetting his name. Oh, Xavier Howard's still out there. Maybe the Bengals could go get Xavier Howard. We said that 15 times over this offseason. But now I look at this depth chart, and I think that the DBs are one of the real strengths of this team, going down 2-3 deep.
Yeah, it's I would love, oh my goodness, I would love, first off, for Dax Hill to turn into a true cornerback, someone that we can make a cornerstone of this defense for years to come. And I would love if the trio of Geno Stone, Jordan Battle, and then Von Bell, I know he's going to get the start, and he's earned that. He really has in the city. I would love if that safety room could let me just shut everyone up about Jesse Bates' contract. I would adore it. Oh, my God. I'm tired of hearing about it. Because
I'm with you.
$20 million for a safety, I think, when you have other people to pay is criminally insane. Not just insane, but it's a felonious act if you think that is what you should be doing with this salary room, salary cap. Someone asked me recently, they said, man, I would have rather extend Jesse Bates over re-sign our linebackers, and we can maybe get into linebackers. I don't know what else you have planned for this show, because I thought they made a major step back here, but that was kind of the trade we made, right? We extended Logan Wilson, we extended Jermaine Pratt, and we told Jesse Bates, shook his hand, said, hey, you're great here for years, but we can't pay you $20 million. So I looked it up. You can get Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, and then some. It's like it's 2 years of them pays for one Jesse Bates. Yeah. That's still an incredible trade. I understand. I understand fans that are upset with Jesse Bates walking out the door. I get it. You're seeing you develop a guy that has turned into the best in the league at his position. But it's just a position that is minuscule. Like, you can find better ways to use your money than give it to Jesse Bates, and that's just what it comes down to.
Right.
I'm sorry about it. I am so freaking excited about watching Geno Stone play football this year. Oh. I am so excited about it.
Yes.
I mean, the dude was second in the National Football League in interceptions last year, and we just throw it away. We just act like that's not a thing. We just act like it.
He's 25 years old.
Right. He's so young.
He's young.
I do think it's funny that we signed 2 defensive players that their best year last year was against the Bengals.
Right.
We did do that.
Yep.
We did that with Geno Stone. He had an incredible interception. And then Sheldon Rankins, who had 4 sacks against the Bengals last year.
Yeah, I think so. 4-sack game.
But forget it. That's just they know how to play at Paycor Stadium. That's what it comes down to. They know how to play in the jungle. Right. It's called the jungle because the seats are green. But this
look at you.
This secondary is something that just gets me overly excited about because I truly believe that we have an opportunity to stop talking about the Jesse Bates contract. And if I could take anything away from this season, I want that because I know good things are on the other side of that conversation being done.
I'm with you there, and we really got a glimpse into why Von Bell was starting when the Bengals announced their captains a couple days ago. We have 8 captains this year, 4 captains returning. Joe Burrow, he's been a captain every single year of his career. Ted Karras, every year he's been with the Bengals. Sam Hubbard, and then Von Bell as well. Von Bell's been a captain every year he's been with the Bengals, and he's actually only been a captain his time in Cincinnati. He's never been a captain with any other team in his career. And there were 4 more captains, 4 new captains: Orlando Brown Jr., Jermaine Pratt, Akeem Davis-Gaither, and Evan McPherson. The Bengals adding 2 special teams captains this year with Davis-Gaither and Evan McPherson. I love showing the special teams guys some love. There's 3 phases to the game. That stuff matters. Akeem Davis-Gaither has been here forever. He's as versatile as they come. He does everything we ask him to on special teams. He's been a great linebacker 3. And then obviously we paid McPherson because we know what he is. He absolutely deserves that C on his chest. Not a whole lot of surprises with the captains. With the whole Jamar Chase situation, obviously he's not going to be there. When you think about captains, you think about big names, but that's not always the case. It's the leaders of the team, and I think the Bengals got it right pretty much across the board this year.
Yeah, I like their captains. It's funny that you have to call him Evan McPherson. I just call him EMAC because we're golfing buddies. Yeah. We're buddies. We're best friends. People at Coldstream Country Club are still talking about the first 3 holes I played against Evan McPherson. It was truly a sight to behold. He ended up beating me by 22 strokes.
I've never received that many texts in just 3 holes of golf. I think it was every shot was an update.
It was phenomenal. It was amazing. I showed up nervous as heck, and I was tied with Evan McPherson after 3 holes. Reminder, he beat me by 21 stroke. My bad. Evan McPherson, EMAC. He lets me call him EMAC because we're buddies.
Your guy.
We're dudes like that. But yeah. No, I have nothing to say about the captains. It's who they should be. I'm not in the locker room every day, so I have utmost confidence in who the team and who the coaches decide who should be the captain. So yeah, it's the guys. Sure, Evan McPherson deserves it, and like I said, it's just it's a title more than it is really meaningful. The real captains show it in practice. The real leaders of the team show it in the locker room, on the field, in the huddles. It's those C's on your jerseys are just decorations.
That's right. I totally agree. You alluded to it, my answer at least, in the last segment, but I wanted to get our takes on our favorite new additions for the Bengals this year. Obviously, across the board, the big dogs are more or less the same. The Trey Hendricksons, the Logan Wilsons, the Jermaine Pratts, Burrow and Chase on offense, T. Higgins still here. But there were a lot of big additions to the Bengals on both sides of the ball this year. We talked about the running back room. We talked about some of the guys on the defense. The addition I'm most excited for, we just said it earlier, it's Geno Stone. And I don't really know how you could have a different answer, in all honesty, after watching the Bengals last season, because the safety room was a massive, massive problem. I mean, I think the most hated man in Cincinnati for about 5 weeks was Nick Scott, just because of the position that he played and how poorly he played it. Bringing Geno Stone in, if he can play at a high level in that back end with either Bell or Battle, that's going to be such a lift to this team. And if he can even play at a shadow of what he played at last year, production-wise, the turnover rate for this defense was going to grow astronomically. I think he is the exact kind of guy that this team should be targeting. He's the exact kind of guy that we've hit on in the past, second contract studs that fly a little bit under the radar, like Trey Hendrickson, like DJ Reader, like Von Bell before we let him go after his first stint with the Bengals. That's the exact kind of formula the Bengals have used in this iteration of the team. And I hope it works again, and I really think it would. Geno Stone was one of the guys I was most excited for on the free agent market. I couldn't be happier that we got him.
When the free agent list came out, I circled one guy for the secondary, and we got him. And it was Geno Stone. I wanted the youth. I wanted the division familiarity. I wanted him coming off his best year. Some people say, well, that means that he's going to be worse. No, I see it trending upwards, right? He's getting more experience. He's getting a little older, all these fun things. You mentioned the name Nick Scott, who's like saying Voldemort around here.
Yeah.
And I promise I'm not doing the Jesse Bates thing again, but the mistake wasn't not signing Jesse Bates last year. It was signing Nick Scott. You could have done something better than that. The mistake wasn't letting Jesse Bates walk. It was, you should have got something better. And I think they immediately righted their wrong. Between Geno Stone, between a bounce back in Von Bell, I know he got cut. I know he played for a worthless team in the Carolina Panthers last year, and we're getting him at a veteran minimum. His best years were in Cincinnati. I like bringing him home. And then Jordan Battle, like this safety room, and I know I have belittled the safety position multiple times on this show already, but this safety room is something to be excited about. If you get, as you mentioned, half the production that you got from Geno Stone last year in terms of turnovers, he is a phenomenal signing at $4.5 million, which I think is what he got. So, he is number one. Out of new additions, he is number one on my list.
Number 2 on my list is Sheldon Rankins, and I think that's because of the position that he's filling.
It's a good list. It's a good list.
Obviously, losing DJ Reader, a lot of questions on the interior of that defense, and you have to fill them with someone. You got a somewhat recognizable name, which is exactly what you want. I didn't want the Bengals to just go out and get a nobody and hope that it worked. Sheldon Rankins is a guy that's been productive in the league for a long time. Obviously, like Reed said, his best year was last year, and a lot of that came with a 3-sack game against the Bengals. So, I don't know what necessarily my expectations are for Rankins, but I think he's going to be great. I don't think he's going to be DJ Reader, and that's my only concern for Bengals fans, is I think Bengals fans are going to be concerned when he's not a phenomenal run defender, because that's what they've come to expect out of their interior D linemen. He's going to be a pass rush guy. I think this defense is going to look a lot different this year. I don't think we're going to be running that true nose tackle like Lou has for the last however many years. A really good coach, like I truly believe Lou is, adapts his defensive scheme to his defense. When you have a guy like DJ Reader, maybe the best interior nose tackle in the entire league as a true nose, you run a true nose. When you don't have him, you don't run a true nose. I think if the Bengals were going to run the same defense we would have seen last year, we wouldn't see them going into week 1 with Jay Tufele and McKinley Jackson as the only 2 true nose tackles on the roster. I think we're going to see some big-time changes on the front of that defense with just the way it looks, the schemes we're running, and I'm excited to see Rankins in it. I mean, we've said 5 or 6 times that he had 3 sacks against us. If he plays 17 games in Paycor Stadium, that's a 51 sack season. So if we can just get a third of that production, I'll be over the moon with Sheldon Rankins.
The Sheldon Rankins signing is so interesting because I think it's a noticeable shift to mirror what successful teams have done. You look at the last, 5 Super Bowl winners? They have one thing in common above everything else, on top of an elite quarterback, Matt Stafford, Tom Brady, and Patrick Mahomes. They had a pass rush from the center of the defensive line. Now we're talking Chris Jones 3 times and Aaron Donald and Vita Vea.
Yeah.
But it is a luxury that very few teams in the National Football League have. And it is a luxury that if you find it, it puts you so far ahead of the pack defensively, where if you can push back the middle of that line, you are disrupting a quarterback's vision, you are disrupting offensive coordinators' plans, you're disrupting everything. And that's what Sheldon Rankins has the ability. I'm not saying he's going to do it, because as you mentioned, like we're seeing, up and down production. He had his best season last year, and that's coming off the one game, as we mentioned, in the jungle. The seats are green. But Sheldon Rankins has the ability to give the Cincinnati Bengals something that we haven't seen truly in this Joe Burrow era, and that is a dominant pass rush up the middle. Will we see it? I don't know. I'm hoping that we do. But if we get the best of Sheldon Rankins, we are putting ourselves ahead. We're putting ourselves in the top of roster makeup. Because like I said, the hardest thing to find is a quarterback. We've done that. And then if you look at who has won the Super Bowl, the second hardest thing to find is a pass rush from the interior line. And that's what Sheldon Rankins has the ability to give us.
And hopefully the Bengals struck on 2 of those guys this offseason, adding Chris Jenkins in the draft as well. I think he's a guy that a lot of people are underrating going into this season. I know D-line depth is one of my main concerns. We're going to get to it here later, talking about where we worry about this Bengals team. But I really do like Chris Jenkins in the middle. I think him and Rankins is going to give this team something we haven't had. Like you said, with the teams that have won the Super Bowl, that interior defensive presence is such a big deal. And Trey Hendrickson has really been the only player on this defense that has really gotten consistent sack production. DJ Reader, as great as he wasn't a pass rush threat. Sam Hubbard, hometown kid, love him to death, captain, not a pass rush threat really. So I hope that we could get another really productive sack artist, if you will, by Trey Hendrickson on that defensive line. And maybe it's neither of those guys in the middle. Maybe it's an edge rusher that breaks through. I'm hoping Myles Murphy is that guy personally.
Yeah, it's funny. I said this a lot last year, but everyone wants more pass rush. No one wants to talk about how we get there. And all right, well, we look at the consistent threats on the line. Trey Hendrickson, he's doing his job. Can't ask for much more from him. All right, who are the other 2 starters? DJ Reader, Sam Hubbard. Everyone boo-hoo cried when DJ Reader went, and for right reason. He's one of the best nose tackles in the league, and we are having a different look. But Sam Hubbard, he's got to step it up if he wants to continue to be that.
Absolutely.
We just need to get to the quarterback more, and I'm with you. I have probably too much faith in Myles Murphy. I have too much faith in who the Bengals draft early in the drafts more often than not. I haven't given up on Dax Hill. I think that he can find new life in this. I haven't given up on Myles Murphy, and I'm certainly not going to give up on Elias Mims anytime soon. So Myles Murphy can be that. If you're asking me, so we did the Sheldon Rankins about the new additions and everything like that, and I'll go ahead and intercept this real quick. You stole Sheldon Rankins as the second most excited addition to the team.
Yeah.
My second most excited addition is Mike Gesicki.
Okay.
Because of the things that I've talked to you about multiple times and talked about on the show, talked about it on Off the Bench, talked about it in a myriad of reasons. It gives Joe Burrow his first true red zone threat that we've seen. I know he's not a true tight end. I know that's what everyone wants. They want the Travis Kelce, they want the Mark Andrews. That's not what Mike Gesicki is. But more than anything, it gives you when it's getting in that final 20 yards and you've got to get in the end zone. Mike Gesicki gives us a true threat on top of the other pieces that we hadn't seen from Hayden Hurst, that we hadn't seen from CJ Uzomah, that we certainly didn't see from Irv Smith, or Tanner Hudson or whoever. And what's crazy is we had more tight end production last year than we did the 2 previous years. But that was probably just because of Joe Burrow getting hurt and Jake Browning having a different game plan and everything like that. Yeah. But it is truly one of the biggest points of emphasis, I think, for the next step in this offense's progression is having success in the red zone. And I think a large portion of that is because they haven't had a good line in Joe Burrow's life, and that's recipe number 1. When you get into the shortened field, you got to have more time. You got to push the ball forward. But Mike Gesicki gives Joe Burrow his first real red zone threat, and that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, I said it earlier in the show. I think that Mike Gesicki is going to be the 3rd leading receiver on this team. I fully expect him to line up as a wide receiver. He's going to line up in the slot, and he's going to be pretty dang good, I think. The last one that I wanted to touch on, I mean, obviously, unless you have more, but one that I think's flown under the radar with the addition of Elias Mims is people aren't talking about Trent Brown enough. The Bengals haven't had a good right tackle in some time. I mean, we made the Super Bowl with Riley Reif as a last-minute signing, getting hurt right before the playoffs. So this is a household name, a truly dominant NFL tackle when he's on the field. Obviously, a big if, a big when, but when he's been on the field in his career, he's been incredible. I think the Bengals with him and Orlando at the tackle positions have clearly a top 10 tackle duo in the league, maybe even higher than that. I think this is the best O-line Joe Burrow's had in his career, and it's not particularly close. Mm-hmm. I think Trent Brown is a big reason for that because it gives you the flexibility with Elias Mims to not have to rush him into the game, rush him into action when he's not necessarily ready, assuming Trent Brown stays healthy.
The one thing that I want above all else for the Cincinnati Bengals is to figure out right tackle. I'm tired of the revolving door that's been there over the past few years. You mentioned Riley Reif, Jonah Williams last year. Like, it's been a consistent revolving door, and that's what Elias Mims is there to figure out, and Trent Brown's kind of the stopgap in there. But just the size, the sheer size of the man. Like, this line, you mentioned it, is probably the best offensive line that Joe Burrow's had his career. And as you said, it's not really close. Couldn't agree more. The sheer size should get you guys giddy. It's getting me giddy because, as I've mentioned multiple times, if 9 is upright, if that blonde-haired boy, the guy that just buzzed his cut and then bleached his hair, if that guy is upright, the guy that went backless over in Spain or wherever he went, Italy, Milan, wherever he went over in the offseason, if that guy has time to find his many receivers, this Bengals team will flourish. And I think Trent Brown, Pro Bowl caliber, Casey McAllister put it in there, and I know some other people put it in there. When he is on the field, he's been really, really good. Sometimes. But he's just the sheer size. I think that we have an ability to figure out a way, an offensive game plan that works. And I think Trent Brown fits the scheme of what the Cincinnati Bengals are trying to do, throwing the ball more, getting bigger guys back there, all those things. I think it's great. And I think it is a good stopgap. As I mentioned, I want Trent Brown to start every game this year because that means that he's doing well or he didn't get hurt. But I still think Amarius Mims is the future. I think that throughout the year, at some point, Amarius Mims will get a chance to play. But Trent Brown is certainly a piece that has gone under the radar. It's so funny in the NFL that if you don't get these huge names, no one wants to talk about your additions. Everyone rotates pieces in and out, right? They go, you're losing pieces. But unless you're the Philadelphia Eagles that get Saquon Barkley, or the Baltimore Ravens and their number one rushing offense get Derrick Henry, oh, I'm so scared. No one wants to talk about the additions that you add to your team. You can make we get Geno Stone. Second in the league in interceptions. No one wants to talk about. We get one of the biggest human beings that live on this earth in Trent Brown, and he's going to play right tackle for Joe Burrow, and no one wants to talk about it. And on top of drafting a humongous human being in Amarius Mims to play right tackle as well. All these additions, I think that, and I hope I'm not eating crow in about 5 weeks, 6 weeks, but I think all these additions are fit exactly what the Cincinnati Bengals want to do. And that's the biggest thing. They looked at all the pieces that they wanted to fill, and they did it. So
that's exactly what I was about to say. I think the Bengals got out of last season. They really took a look at that roster and said, I don't know how long we're going to be able to compete for a Super Bowl. Obviously, Joe Burrow said it's his whole career, but we all know that might not be a reality. They took a hard look at the roster. They said, we need to fill some holes in order to compete next year. And they went out and they signed those guys. They signed some of the best guys at those positions in all of free agency. And they're going, quote unquote, all in. We can argue whether they are or not, but that signing, going to get these pieces to compete on one-year deals. Geno Stone, the one long-term deal you give this offseason to a guy who's 25 years old. You're locking in a Super Bowl window right now where you're trying to win right now. And that's the commitment I like to see from the organization because we never really knew if that would come. We knew that they would draft Joe Burrow, sign Joe Burrow. We knew they'd sign Jamar Chase, or at least we still hope they will. They take care of their star players, but we haven't yet seen the Bengals really pour themselves into a Super Bowl window, and they're doing that right now, which is just extremely refreshing to see as a fan. Moving off the sunshine and rainbows to a little bit, darker, gloomier topic, we got to talk about the biggest concerns with this team because as we've spent a lot of time on a lot of the highlights, there are some lowlights with this roster, some lowlights with the expectations as well. I'll let you start it off. I don't want to steal anything from you again, but what's your biggest concern going into week one, going into the season as a whole for this Bengals team?
The biggest concern is that these linebackers don't figure it out. I think that a couple years ago, a big piece of the success that the Cincinnati Bengals had defensively was from Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt. They get extensions last year, and they take not a small step back. They took a massive leap back. And you and I both understand that pass rush and cornerback play are key. They're king on the defensive side of the ball, but they still have linebackers. They still employ linebackers for a reason. I need them to get back. I don't need them to progress to where we thought they were going to be. I need them to be what they were over the Super Bowl run on that 2-year stretch where we went to back-to-back AFC championship games. I don't need all-pro linebackers. I just need you to be worth the money that we paid you at a position that necessarily isn't a premium. I just need you to get back to where you were. And another step back or what we saw more of the same last year is going to just be a massive hit to this team. It's going to be a massive hit to this team if Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt don't get back to where they were.
Yeah, 2 years ago, if you asked me to forecast what the strength of this defense was going to be down the line, I would have said linebacker. I had all the faith in the world in Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt. Not that I don't anymore. I still think those guys can be great, especially Logan Wilson. I think he's truly an upper caliber linebacker. I know last year he didn't necessarily show it, but I have a lot of faith in him being a real star at that position and figuring it out again because they've shown it before. That's the thing with those two guys that's so frustrating is you've seen it. You've seen how good they've been, and you've seen it for long stretches. We've seen them play at a very high level for many, many games in a row, and then it just falls off somewhat inexplicably. And that's really just the point. It's a great point to bring up. It wasn't even on my list, but that's something that's definitely a worry because you've already locked those guys up as well. You can't just have that money go to waste. Paying 2 off-ball linebackers is not a very common thing to do in the NFL. So this is breaking the mold a little bit, and if it doesn't work, I mean, when we're already talking about paying other guys and the struggles in doing so, we might be looking at those contracts as a real fork in the road where we're not too happy looking back that we re-signed both those guys.
I do want to give credit to the Bengals front office. And, we were just talking about like filling holes and everything like that. Right before the year that Joe Burrow was drafted, the biggest hole from the year prior was the defensive linebacking. I don't remember if you remember this draft. We went Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and then 4 out of our next 5 picks were linebackers. They were like, all right, we're going to figure out this right here. And for a while, they thought they had it. They just need to get back to where they were. Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, I have faith in them. They just got to get back to where they were. I don't need them to be spectacular. I just need to be what they were.
We talked about how much we like this starting offensive line, and now it's probably the best offensive line in Joe Burrow's career. I think we're about 1.5 injuries away from it not being very good. That's my main concern this year. Is
so we
the
should have
backup
kept Jackson
offensive
Carman.
line. I don't know if he's a great option as a backup, but if that's the best option you have, I don't know. I mean, Amarius Mims, who's on the PUP list, will not be playing until week 5, is the backup tackle for both tackle spots. What are we supposed to do if someone gets hurt? I understand that you're not going to roster all these guys, but we have 5 tight ends. There's clearly space where we could pick up some more depth on the offensive line. I would actually like the Bengals to do so, but Mims backing up both tackles positions does scare me quite a bit. Jackson Kirkland and Cody Ford backing up the guards. Cody Ford has shown flashes of being a pretty serviceable lineman in the NFL when he's come in and played on the inside, not as much at tackle, but at guard he's been fine, so that's not as bad. And my question with Matt Lee at center is he necessarily ready yet? We saw he had a pretty good preseason. He's fairly undersized. I'm worried about just throwing him into the fire at center and then obviously really not having a backup currently at tackle. I don't have faith in Kirkland at the opposite guard. So if we're missing a guy or two on that starting offensive line that goes out there week 1 when we get to divisional games, when we get to the playoffs, I'm going to be really nervous.
So what you're telling me is I need to get it like a little seance going. I need to like lay out the candles, get in the middle, and hum that we don't get any injuries. Yeah, and
yes.
And if there's one thing you can pencil in on an NFL season, it's that at some point an offensive lineman will go down, not for a game, but for multiple games. And the depth, there's no doubt about it, is the most troubling thing. And it's just so tired. It's just so tired as a Bengals fan to think about more inept offensive line play. But here we are, a few injuries away from getting that. Now, if we are just the luckiest fan base and the luckiest team in the league and we just don't have a single injury all season long, hey, good for
splendid.
us. It'd be fantastic. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So, yeah, it certainly is scary, is it not? I mean, it just certainly is concerning to think that this line is 2 injuries away from being 2021 Cincinnati Bengals offensive line and not the 2024 offensive line that we are expecting.
My last concern I have circled on this Bengals roster is kind of a product of hearing nothing instead of hearing a lot out of camp, and it's the punter position. We all know Brad Robbins was terrible last year. That's just about as cut and dry as it can come. And then you bring in 2 punters, undrafted free agents, the second and third best punter in this draft class didn't get drafted, and Austin McNamara gets cut 2 weeks into the preseason, and then you have Ryan Redcow who makes the roster seemingly just because Brad Robbins is hurt. How could we not find a punter better than Brad Robbins? How is this the case again? The Bengals did such a good job addressing their needs, but we're running out the same punter who was dead last in the league last year. I just don't understand how you can have this this mindset and just walk him back out there. I understand the Bengals aren't going to punt a whole lot, yada, yada, yada. Even the best offenses punt a lot. So you need to have a good punter.
Listen, you've been around so much more football than I will ever be around. How do you misjudge a punter's talents? Like, how do you do that?
I don't know.
Nothing changes other than fans, right? So it's just a mental makeup. So you get a guy that's headstrong, and you say, all right, let me see you punt the ball. All right, it goes 55, 60, whatever it is, and you go, all right, this guy's pretty good. I just don't know how you misjudge. My favorite video, maybe in the history of being a Bengals fan, was the one where we drafted Brad Robbins. I don't know if you remember this one, but Zach Taylor's on the phone with Brad Robbins, and Brad Robbins thought it was a joke.
It was a prank. Yeah.
Should have been a dead giveaway. Hey, maybe we shouldn't draft this guy. When the guy is answering the phone, be like, wait, me? You're picking me?
Are you sure?
Are you picking me? Like, if I got a call up right now, I'd be like, are you sure you want me to punt? I'll do it. I'll show out there. I'll do my best. But, yeah, that's where Brad Robbins is. Golly. I've given a lot of credit to this coaching staff and being able to identify talent for the position that seems like it's the easiest to identify in punting. Hey, let me see you take a snap and then punt the ball. Catch it with your hands and then kick it with your little leg and see how far it can go, how high up in the air it can go. It seems incredibly easy to judge. It seems like I could do it tomorrow. It seems like I could go right down to Paycor Stadium and go to the bubble or go wherever and go like, yeah, this guy's clearly the best punter. But clearly the Bengals can't do that because we're going to run Brad Robbins out there again and we're going to have the worst punting unit in the league. But here's to hoping that it was just a freshman slump. It was just a rookie. He's just
banking on a freshman slump is a tough place to be.
he just needs a little more time. He just needs a little bit more time in the Bengals locker room, which, as we all know, is clearly world class, to put a little more weight, put a little more strength in that leg, and then he'll be the best punter in the league soon enough.
Right. Yeah, any anonymous player survey and anything says our facilities are all the best. All right,
that's correct. Correct.
We'll keep that going. That's enough. That's enough doom and gloom for the Bengals. But before we get out of here, Reed, I'm going to hold you to it. We're going to have to make some predictions for the season. As we get going into the regular season, we're going to predict this game, obviously, but we're going to predict some predictions for the season as well. I'm not talking record. Everyone's going through the record and picking games. I want some bold predictions for the season as a whole. I'll start off, give you a little time to think. My 2 right away is that Joe Burrow is going to have a career best in passing yards and touchdowns. Okay. I think Joe Burrow is going to have a career best season this year. That'll be 40 touchdowns. That'll be over 4,000 yards. That's both overs if you've been paying attention to the bottom ticker. I think Joe Burrow is going to be right there in the MVP conversation at the end of the season. I think the Bengals are going to be right there for the 1 seed, and I think all of that's going to be because of his play and because of how great he's been. And he said it in however many interviews he's done this offseason. He wants to get out there and remind people. I think he's going to do exactly that. I think he's going to start hot. I think he's going to finish hot. I think he's going to be hot in the middle. I think Joe Burrow is going to have a career year this year in both yards and touchdowns.
Okay. Oh, baby. That gets me excited. If you want an offensive one, here, I'll throw this one, spitball it out before I give you just team predictions. Give me Mike Gesicki 8 touchdowns.
Ooh.
Mike Gesicki 8 touchdowns.
I like that.
I think I like that a lot. I think that seems, it'll be a shy 8 touchdowns to where you'll look back and be like, oh yeah, that's right, he did score 8 times this year. I don't think it's gonna be one game he scores 4 times or anything like that. It's gonna be a season where he's just gonna be the red zone threat that we think he's gonna be. All right, defense was 30th in the league last year. I 30th. Think in scoring, I think they're 32nd in rush defense or something like that. Give me a top 12 defense in scoring this year.
Love that.
Top 12 defense in scoring this year. Right there. Right?
You combine those 2 things, I don't know, the Bengals are losing many games. Sign me up. I'm all in. Yeah. But give me. I think King Lou is going to get that. I think Sheldon Rankins, Geno Stone are going to be a big influence. I think that this team has a lot of depth in the secondary that gets me excited. I think that the linebackers are going to take a step forward to where they were closer to back in 2021, 2022. Like I said earlier, I think all the things are going to trend the right way. I really like this Bengals defense. Can't get much worse. I think it's going to be top 12. My big one, and really the reason I threw this in here anyway, is because I wanted to say it. I think the Bengals are going to have 3,000-yard players this year.
Okay.
T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, whether it's a running back, whether it's an emergence of a third wide receiver, whether it's Mike Gesicki at tight end, I think the Bengals are going to have 3,000-yard players at their given position this year. Obviously, 2, Jamar and T. Higgins are virtual locks, but I think someone else, whether it's a running back, if Chase Brown can grab that leading role at running back at some point earlier in the season, I think his explosiveness is enough for him to get there on a lower number of carries. I think Gesicki, if he's getting 8 touchdowns, he's a pretty dang good target. So I think he's going to get the ball a lot. I think he could be on the door of 1,000 yards. We saw the 3 receivers do it with Joe Mixon with 1,000 rushing yards. So it's certainly doable in this offense. I think the Bengals are going to do it this year.
I wasn't going to go quite to 3,000-yard guys on the offense, but I do like that opinion. Everyone gets so concerned about what you lose instead of what you gain. Like, everyone wants to look at, like, Tyler Boyd being gone. Everyone wants to look at Joe Mixon being gone. Everyone wants to look at, I keep bringing up the Jesse Bates thing a few years ago, and they don't want to talk about what you're bringing in. They don't look forward. They want to look in reverse. And I really like that opinion because that's a look forward. That's saying that we're going to figure out another incredibly viable threat from this offensive unit. It's no longer the Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow. This is something new, and I really, 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 really like that opinion, and I think I share it with you. All right.
Love that. That's the last bold one I had. You got one more?
I think I'm all chalked out of there with the bold predictions. I have some season bold predictions, not like in terms of statistics or anything like that. But do you want me to just go ahead and rip them?
Go for it.
I think that the Bengals go 5-1 in the AFC North. I don't know how bold that is. I think that is somewhere that we've talked frequently about. This team hasn't gotten it done in the division. I think both times that they've won the division, the Super Bowl year they went 4-2. The next year they went 3-3, if I'm correct, and I think I am. So it's been kind of a bugaboo over the past few years in Zach Taylor's era. I think that mirrored with a 5-1 record and their out-of-division schedule, this team could be looking at a January through Paycor Stadium. But I think it all starts with 5-1 in the division, giving people a new look and kind of reminding the AFC North who the heck the Cincinnati Bengals are.
Maybe you thought that one was crazy bold, but I totally agree with you. The only loss I have in the division for the Bengals is at Baltimore, unless you're so good that you lose at Pittsburgh in Week 18 because you're resting starters. I think you're either going 5-1 and 4-2 in the division. That just goes back to what I said. We're talking about Joe Burrow. I just think he's going to be on a different level this year. And absolutely all the respect in the world to Lamar Jackson. Outside of that, I don't think there's a quarterback in this division that's even remotely close to playing the same sport as Joe Burrow, and that is why I think the Bengals are going to win. I know the Browns have had our number or whatever. At some point, the better players are going to win the game, and we have the better players.
So we're looking at the division, and I don't know your opinion, and here I'm just spitballing, no longer talking about Cincinnati Bengals, but are you there's kind of a trendy thing amongst NFL insiders to look at the Baltimore Ravens and suspect a major step back. I don't share that opinion. Do you?
No, I don't. I think that's they're either going to be really good or take a major step back. Like, there is no 10-7 for the Ravens this year. I don't think. I think it's one of the two options. I would certainly lean just as dominant as last year.
Okay, so I can't imagine this team taking a major step back and missing the playoffs without a Lamar Jackson injury. I can't imagine that whatsoever.
Okay, that's fair.
And that's somewhat of a trendy pick. I look at last year and I know that they're returning 2 offensive linemen and they lost a lot of defensive pieces, so it is a new team. But I look at last year and that Baltimore Ravens team, if they win the Super Bowl, we're talking about them like they're one of the best teams that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And because of one bad postseason game, literally one bad postseason game, because you remember they took pretty sure-handedly of the AFC champion Houston Texans, the team that everyone wants to crown to be the best team that they've ever seen, the Houston Texans. And so I'm not buying that. But other than that one game, we're looking at one of the best teams that we've seen play an NFL regular season. Truly are. So I just have a hard time believing that they take such a regression that they miss the postseason entirely. I think I'm with you. I think they're closer to a 12-5 team once again. I think they were 13-4, 14-3 last year. I think 12-5 vying for the AFC North once again, one of the best teams in the AFC. I don't have that opinion, but that was just a random thing that crept in my head today.
I think that 12-13 win line is right about what I expect it to take to win the North. So I have the Bengals going through the whole schedule. I have the Bengals going 13-4. And I think that record is good enough to win the North, and I think good enough to get the 1 seed. So like you said earlier, if we can start hot against a fairly easy opening schedule, January in the AFC should be running through Paycor, which would just be phenomenal because we know how these fans show up and show out for special games, different moments and everything like that. Especially the playoffs have been great, but to have a white out or an orange out or a stripe out or something in Paycor for a playoff game would be unbelievable.
What do you think? And I'm going to ask this. I'm going to ask you a prediction. You didn't plan for this one, but
all right,
give me what you're going to lead off what you think you're going to lead off the show on the second week of October. What is that? 6 weeks into the year? I think that's the first
second week of October.
So that's the first 6 weeks. I think a lot of people circle this first 6 weeks because we see 4 games that should be won and then 2 games that are very, very tough. What do you think you're going to be talking about the Cincinnati Bengals team around that time? Do you think it's going to be this team is exactly who we expect them to be? It's more of the team that we saw 2 years ago, which is the best Bengals team of my lifetime when they lost the Arrowhead in the AFC Championship? Or do you think it's going to be kind of hovering around a panic button and be like, what's wrong with this team? Why isn't this team playing better?
I think maybe it's optimism. I think we're going to see the team that we expect to see. And I think that is partially because of the schedule. If we're not ready to go yet, if we're not up to 100% speed yet in week 1, like we've seen for the last 2 or 3 years, where that's been the case with Zach Taylor's teams, if we're not up to speed yet, I still think you can just outskill the Patriots, the Commanders, the Panthers, the Giants, a lot of teams on this schedule that I think even if you aren't ready at 100%, 100 miles an hour early, which I think is going to be the case with Jamar Chase missing all of camp, I think this team is going to start a little bit slow. I think we're going to have a fine record, but I think there's going to be a little bit of concerns about the ceilings of the team, but I think they'll be answered very, very shortly after. The start of the schedule is just so easy as you get into October, into November, into December. You play more playoff teams. I mean, Browns, Eagles, Cowboys, Browns again. Those are the teams where you're really going to learn about how competitive the Bengals are. If the Bengals lose to the Chiefs in week 2, I'm going to say that it's early in the season and it doesn't matter. If the Bengals beat the Chiefs in week 2, I'm going to say they're the best team in the world and they're definitely winning the Super Bowl. So that's how early season results work, at least for me. I'm not going to overreact unless, we lose to the Patriots, Commanders, and Panthers or something like that. But it's going to take something crazy for me to overreact to the start of this season. I have so much confidence in this team. If they get in as a wild card team, I'll still take them to win the Super Bowl. So we can beat anyone on any given day. Regardless of the start of this season, I'm not going to be too nervous.
All right. That's about where I think. So I was just curious where you think you're going to be 6 weeks into this show. All right. Well, I hope you're right.
Before we get out of here, 9.5, week 1. You won't be here Thursday. So are you taking 9.5? Bengals minus 9.5 at home against the Patriots? It's a big number.
I don't know if I've told you this about me, but
no, you have.
I try to be a smart gambler when it comes to football games. I try to do the right thing. Like, I read the sharps and I look at lines and, trends and everything like that. But when it comes to the Who Days, the fighting Who Days, the fighting Lou Anarumo's, Zach Taylor's, Joe Burrow's, whatever the line is, sure. Yeah, 9.5. That's where we're going today. Let's rock and roll. I know there are smart people out there that they bet the other side, so that they can be happy either way. Especially when you're favored, you get one or the other. Sometimes you'll get the double. Sometimes your team will win and you'll cover your bet. I don't do that because you know why? I want to see my team. I don't want to be at Paycor Stadium or at the Avenue or in this studio watching the game, and it's the fourth quarter, and we have the ball, and I'm begging the Bengals not to score again because I don't want, they've already won the game. I bet the other team.
Yeah.
Let's just cover. I don't want to do that. I want to see every time that the Cincinnati Bengals get the ball, I want to see the ball go in the end zone. So if you're asking me, do the Bengals cover 9.5? Or if you're asking me, which side will I bet? I will bet the Cincinnati Bengals minus 9.5. Do I think they'll get it? No, I do not. That's a very big number early in the year, and those lines never come back your way. So both sides of the coin.
Do you think that line will move / how much do you think it will move if Jamar Chase is not playing in the game? How many points do you think Jamar's worth?
I think, well, I 2.
I think that's exactly what I said. I think it'll be 7.5. 2. And I love us at 7.5.
It's not always 2 though. See, people always ask that question, what do you think a person's worth? Like, the difference between 9.5 and 7.5 is not the same as 2.5 in a pick'em. Like, that's not the same. Right. Or 1.5 and 3.5. Those aren't the same numbers. It's 2 points every time. But, yeah, he's worth 2. So if he doesn't play, 7.5. And then, sure, I'll hammer it. I'm going to hammer it anyway. So whatever
that's
it is Sunday at 12:45, that's what's going in the account.
And all you guys that are going to hammer it with us, join us right back here on Chatterbox Bengals. I'll be watching the game live. So hop on the stream, join the chat. Let's all have a good time and cover that 9.5.
That's right. That's right. And you said you were wrong. You said I'm not going to be there Thursday. I plan.
Are you?
I plan on.
Let's go. Big time.
Listen, if you want to, I don't know if we talked about it on this show. I know you brought it up on Off the Bench earlier today, but I've got to be there. Make sure that it goes smoothly. As you can tell, I did a great job making this stream go smoothly. So I'm really good at that. Yeah. But I got to make sure it happens on Thursday.
No, good news. Good news that you'll be there Thursday. That's good for everybody. So we will. I guess we'll both see you then.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you want to tease it again? You want to talk about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might as well. Let's be professional. So Chatterbox and Champions Grill on the West Side have partnered, and Thursdays Chatterbox Bengals shows every other Thursday, starting this Thursday.
Right.
Right. Every other Thursday, starting this Thursday.
That's right.
We will be live from Champions for Chatterbox Bengals. That's going to be from 7 to 8. It's going to be me, Elliot, Casey, sometimes Reed. Kinner might even show up every now and then. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun. We're all going to be there. We're all going to be doing Chatterbox Bengals. It's going to be live on YouTube like always. But if you guys can get out of the house and come down and say hello to everyone, come down and be a part of it. It'll be great to see everyone in person.
Come on down. Have a beer with us. I swear I'm a lot of fun with the beer. I'm a lot of fun with the beer in hand. So we'll have a blast. We'll have a blast talking Bengals. Shout out to Champions Grill for sponsoring that event. We're really excited to do it. Just went down there today. I don't know if you've ever been there, Jacob. It's a phenomenal little bar. Phenomenal little bar.
Elliot sent me pictures. He said it looks great.
It looks great. We're very, very excited to do it. So that'll be Thursday at 7 o'clock. Actually, 7 on the dot is assuming everything goes well.
We'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. I don't have a great track record, do I? But it's, yeah, we're really excited.
That's all I got today, Reed. Unless you got anything else to add, we will see you guys at Champions Thursday.
We do have a super chat. Have a super chat. Michael Rolfe with a $5 super chat. I'll wait to super chat until next week because I've already spent over $1 million this week on a teeth fixer place. Hashtag budget. Hashtag fun. Hashtag PU. No. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Michael Rolfe, for the $5 super chat.
Big shouts, Michael Rolfe.
We really appreciate it. We love you. Best dentist in Cincinnati, bar none. In fact, I might start going to him. Maybe not because I don't have good dental hygiene, so I can't expose myself.
You can't expose yourself yet.
No, not quite. I'll stick to the ones in Hamilton. But Michael, thank you for tuning. Thank you everyone for tuning in.
That's right.
A lot of fun. Thank you for having me today, by the way, Jacob.
Of course. I'm glad you could make it.
Yeah.
So you got to end it. You're the one running VMix.
All right, that's right. I am running this whole thing. So, guys, we'll see you on Off the Bench tomorrow. We'll see you on Chatterbox Bengals this Thursday coming out to Champions, 7 p.m. The whole gang will be there. It'll be a lot of fun. And then hopefully the Bengals will win this Sunday, and we'll have some fun things to talk about. And hopefully they'll cover because I've got drywall.
We'll be on it.
I've got drywall to hang in my house, and the big bet that I'm going to put on the Bengals this weekend certainly will help that. So, guys, thank you for tuning in.